everybody, Melanie here, and welcome back to my channel. This video is for people who are co-parenting with someone who has BPD or suspect BPD. And I have quite a few people emailing me and asking me to make this kind of video to give advice to people who can't go no contact, who still need to involve their personality disordered ex in their life for the sake of the kids, for example. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips and advice if you can relate, if you are co-parenting and you have kids with a personality disordered ex, tips on how to have the most harmonious, if possible, interactions and how to handle this and to not let it destroy you, and how to handle the feelings of guilt, for example. As always, I'm open to hearing your comments, your feedback, your questions. Please email me all your feedback. My email address is in the video description. So to start the video, a reminder that people who are on the BPD spectrum are often quite ambivalent. They want conflicting, opposing things at the same time. And you see this on many levels. You see this with fear of abandonment and fear of enmeshment. Another way that ambivalence is manifested in a borderline's life is through the grass is greener, thinking that the other option means that you will have a better life, a better outcome. And this does relate to fantasy living a little bit, which is very common for people who have cluster B personality disorders. And with BPD, the fantasy acts as a way to soothe, it acts as a way to defend against the harshness and coldness of reality. And the reality means that there's been a lot of suffering, a lot of abuse, a lot of chaos. And so often people with BPD heavily invest in fantasy living as a way to deal, as a way to manage. Not only are they ambivalent people, but often for them, it's very hard for them to make a decision and they will keep changing their mind. Indecision is an issue for people who have BPD. Know that the word decision comes from the Italian word decisio. Decisio literally means to cut. When you make a decision, you are cutting away the other options and you are sticking with this choice and you are following it through. This is an essential step in executing any sort of goal, any sort of project, literally anything. You do need to cut away other options to go ahead with that one particular choice. And people with BPD very much struggle with this, because what if the other option would have been a better choice? And so indecision keeps them stuck, and often it means that they are changing their minds. They struggle with sticking with a choice that they've made. And how this is often seen in relationships is that choices around friends, choices around partners, choices around what they want to do with their life. And on top of that, they often do struggle with impulse control. The whims, impulses, cravings, it takes over and they struggle with working with it. They struggle with self-discipline. They struggle with controlling their id, as Freud would say, which runs on the pleasure principle. And a lot of this is to do with the prefrontal cortex not getting activated when it should. And this area governs impulse control. It governs emotional regulation and logic. And it's what we activate to help us do a reality check when we get into fight or flight, for example, or when we're having a panic attack. I'm saying all of this because sometimes they come back. Sometimes the ex changes their mind and goes back and forth with wanting to be with you, not wanting to be with you. And with any decision that they're making, it can be quite disheartening, it can be quite scary, it can be quite confusing, it can be irritating to watch someone just forever changing their minds and finding it hard to stick with anything and impulsively making choices that were done in the spur of the moment and were not good choices, especially when it comes to money, or speaking their mind about thinking, or buying things. There's so many examples, but if you're co-parenting with someone, it can be quite hard to witness all of this and wondering that why they keep doing this. A lot of this is to do with finding it hard to regulate their impulses and their emotions and they often do get stuck in vicious cycles. Now, if you can relate to this and you're co-parenting with someone who is like this, it's all the more reason that you need to be the stable one. You need to be stable and strong for the children, because children need to have a role model. And if all they are exposed to is the life of someone who is quite chaotic and keeps changing their mind, whether it's houses or jobs, partners, it can be quite overwhelming and quite traumatizing even for the children. Children are very receptive to what's going on in their environment, and they are receptive to their parents as well. So what you need to do is to be the stable one for the children, so that at least they have one parent who is modeling to them how to make healthy choices, having a sense of stability, meaning having a sense of continuity. And this is something that someone with BPD, especially high spectrum BPD, they struggle with. Continuity of self. This requires having good enough parenting growing up and being mirrored and being affirmed back and being seen by the family. It means they don't really have a very stable sense of self. They don't really know who they are. And so this adds to the change in their minds and being all over the place sometimes. So the children need at least one parent who can model to them what is stability, what is continuity, what it's like to have a daily routine. Considering how much a traumatic childhood can really impact a child's development growing up, it's all the more reason that you need to be prioritizing the needs of your children. And saying that, you need to be honest with yourself and think what is best for the kids, not is what is best for me and for my feelings, what is best for the children. Because sometimes it's easy to think that if I can make it work with my ex, then that will be the best option for the children. That will be the best decision, because the children finally have parents together again. The problem is that if this has been quite a toxic, dysfunctional relationship, things aren't necessarily going to go back to how it used to be. And your children are observing this and witnessing this, and they will get impacted. They hear the arguments, they can pick up on the tension between people. And when two people are living together, trying to make it work, the children will pick up on resentment. They will pick up on everything. So staying together just for the sake of the kids, you have to think that, is this a healthy environment for the children to be witnessing and absorbing all this repressed, unsaid words and anger and resentment and bitterness and whatever emotions are in this toxic relationship? Your children are like sponges and will absorb everything. So really the best option is making sure the children have a harmonious environment that they can be in, that they are not exposed to dysfunctional people arguing at each other, not exposed to the fights, and to make sure that they are safe and that they are looked after. And no two relationships are the same. There is no one set method of how to co-parent with someone with BPD, because everyone's different. And some people are more self-aware and are actively working on themselves, and it's a lot easier to co-parent with people like this. And I would say that if you are in a situation where your wife, your girlfriend is maybe just has traits, they're not high spectrum BPD, and sometimes this can get confusing because you think maybe it can work, maybe it can, maybe it won't, but you do need time apart to grow. And because I say this, because dysfunctional relationships are often enmeshed, codependent, as it often always is with people who have BPD. And you need time apart to find yourself again. By that I mean regaining your sense of identity that is outside of the other person. There needs to be time for this. And you need this time to observe if your ex is actually working on themselves. Are they actually making changes and sustaining changes? Rather than just listen to their promises, to what they're saying, are they actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk? And the final thing to remember here is that children need stability it is not fair on the children if you keep getting back with them, breaking up, getting back together, breaking up. It's really unfair of them. And you're showing to them that these kind of relationships are possible. You're showing to them these kind of relationships are normal. Do you want your children to be dating like you are? Do you want your children to be finding themselves constantly in codependent, dysfunctional relationships? If you don't, well, you need to model what is healthy relationships. Do you want your children to be thinking that enmeshed, unhealthy, codependent relationships are the norm? Because your children will be watching you and your ex or any other future partner who is very dysfunctional and will be thinking that this is how life is, this is normal for dating. You need to be a leading example for your children about what are healthy relationships, and for you to model to them what are healthy boundaries. One important thing to do after breaking up with your ex and you're still co-parenting with them, so they're still in your life, is learn to see them objectively now. And this requires making a commitment, a definite choice that you aren't going to get back with them. Because when you commit to making this choice, it means you can actually start to let go and move on. And when you start to do this, when the attachments start to go, when they come off the pedestal a bit, when you let go of the fantasy of reconciliation, when you choose to finally let go, it means that the attachment starts to lessen and you can start to see this person more objectively. And this is really important if you are co-parenting with this person, because you need to be prioritizing the needs of your children. Your children or your child's safety is so important. And to be objectively seeing if your ex is improving or if your ex is actually going down a downward spiral. To look at your ex objectively is so important because it means you can clearly see if there's an issue and to do something about it. And you're not being emotionally pulled into ignoring the situation. Sometimes when there is a very strong emotional attachment, then it's easy to deny, to rationalize what's actually happening. But you need to be seeing the situation and him or her clearly. This is the best way to ascertain, to determine whether there is a dangerous situation happening, whether this person's lying to you, whether this person's actually working on themselves. And you can objectively see that through their actions, things are changing, things are improving, whether this person's actually taking a turn for the worse. And through objective eyes, you are less likely to be sucked back into help, sucked back into looking after them again or giving them money, whatever the situation is. So it goes hand in hand with choosing to let go and committing, sticking to a choice. Because if you are not 100% certain, your ex may try anything and everything to coax you back into a relationship. And I have quite a few clients who have gone back together, broken up, gotten back together, broken up. And each time it happens, it hurts so much. And it's all the worse if you've got children who are witnessing all of this. So you need to be firm with your decision. And it goes hand in hand with objectively seeing your ex and thinking, are they actually improving? The presenting issue that meant that we broke up in the first place, has this actually been addressed? Sometimes when the ex is making these promises, they want to reconcile and they'll say like, I won't do this, I'll never do this, it's going to be like this. And it just seems a little bit too much like wishful thinking, not very realistic. Again, this is a sign that it's not really going to work out because these are unachievable goals sometimes, a bit too unrealistic. They're so desperate to reconcile that they'll say anything and anything to get you back, to win your attention, to win you over again. And there is no guarantee at all that they'll actually stick with the decision, because it's more than likely that they'll change their mind again. It happens with BPD. So part of being a good role model to your children is showing them how to have boundaries with people. And make this clear with your ex when it comes to communicating about when to pick up the kids, things like that. Be firm on when he or she can and can't contact you. Make your boundaries around time limits and communication with your ex clear, and stick with them and honour them. You may need to make it clear to your ex what is an emergency and what's not an emergency, and to only contact you if there's an emergency, to call you within these hours, to not call you in these hours. Make these limits clear to your ex and stick with them, honour them, because this is something that you need to show to your children, that one needs to respect and honour and stick with boundaries that they have with people, because there will be people in their life when they grow up who will test another person's boundaries. So it's a good lesson for them to see how someone can be strong and firm whilst being polite, helpfully assertive. By sticking with your boundaries, you are creating stability and consistency and reliability. And this is important not just for your children, but also for your ex. People with BPD often lack stability. There is an inner chaos within them. So having someone who can model stability and consistency, whether that's to do with picking up and dropping off the kids, or around communication, shared activities, whatever it is, do try to have consistency and stability. For a more civil co-parenting experience, I would aim for more harmonious interactions. Keep your interactions limited, because everyone has limits, all right? Even the most peaceful, passive of people will snap if they are constantly prodded. So you have to be honest with yourself, and if you tend to snap, if you tend to just get really frustrated and flip, know what your time limits are with this person. How much time can you spend with this person before you're getting irritated? Let that be the measure for how much time you decide to spend with this person. If this person is so irritating and so annoying that you can't be there for more than like 10-15 minutes maximum, then so be it. Some people can spend more time with their ex, and it is so important to make sure that you've made a choice about moving on, because if you're unsure, your ex will probably pick up on it and will react to it depending what he or she wants. And it's easy to get sucked into spending more and more and more time. So you need to be firm with how much time you want to spend with this person, how much time you can handle, and what kind of interactions you're going to have with this person, because you will need to have boundaries in place when interacting with your ex. And it's easier to remember these boundaries if you're only interacting with them for short periods of time. But if you're going to be spending longer periods of time together, you need to go in aware that you could end up losing yourself. You could fall into old habits again. The old dynamics may end up repeating if you are not aware of what's going on. So to stop this happening is to go in with this with your eyes open, to anticipate how things might start up again if you are spending a long period of time with them, and to have boundaries on how much you're sharing. Okay, things are different now. You are no longer a husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. You're no longer in an intimate relationship. There needs to be a difference of the relationship now, how that's expressed. And you do this by having boundaries in place about what you're disclosing, about what topics you're talking about. I would suggest not drinking around your ex, because it's very hard to remember boundaries when we're a bit drunk, eh? It's easy to let things slide and fall to our whims and urges. Highly recommend not drinking and just keeping your interactions very short, very civil. Grey rocking can really help. Grey rocking is a way to have short conversations which allow you to escape unscathed. It's a way to regulate the conversation without really ruffling the feathers of the other person, whilst keeping you safe. And I recommend it for events that you can't get out of, when you have to interact with people that you don't particularly like. It's a conflict management strategy in itself, and how you're talking with someone. Wouldn't say it works in the long term. If you're having a relationship with someone, you can't be grey rocking this. This is just for like short interactions with people. What it is not disclosing anything about yourself, and if you do, it's very minimal, and not having an emotional reaction to what this person is saying, not taking the bait when your personality disordered ex is trying to get a rise out of you, to not spend much time in this situation and just say the minimal amount, and to be polite but not particularly interested in what they're talking about. Always strive to be the bigger person, to not take the bait if your ex is wanting to wind you up and to get a reaction out of you. To keep your reactions under control, to model to your ex what it's like to have a stiff upper lip sometimes and practice some impulse control. To not take it personally when they lash out, and to look at him or her objectively to see if there's any issues that you need to get involved in when it comes to the kids. And I'll leave it at that. There's obviously a lot more to be said, so please email me with any questions or any topics in this field that you would like me to talk more about. And I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye for now.